Welcome back, guys. Video 14 of this advanced level framework development series. In my last video, I did spoke about creating action engines where we can log each and every test action into extend report, or you can prefer logger as well. The same steps you can repeat with loggers. Okay. In this video number 14, I'm going to talk on uh, basically I'm going to show you how this logging happens by creating a sample login test. Okay, just to verify the parallel execution. Like till now we didn't tested the things, right? So we'll test it with parallel execution and the custom messages logs. Okay, so to begin, let me go to my Eclipse. Okay, and what we did in last video is we created action engine, and we did created three to, I guess, couple of only. Okay, couple of methods: send keys custom method, click custom method. Okay, so I wrote few more methods which I might be needing, that is clear method, move to element method if I want to hover my mouse to any of the elements. So again, everything remains same. Try catch block, under try, whatever I want to perform, and wherever I want to log the message, positive message or success message, status dot pass and status dot fail for exceptions, and going to put the exception as okay. And wherever I want to access the driver, for example here I want to use actions, under for using actions class I would need the driver, right? So for using drivers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to access my driver. How? Driver factory dot get instance dot get driver, because we already did the set driver into my before method. Next I wrote for is element present, it is going to return me true or false boolean result. Then select value, select drop down value by visible text or by value. Then assert equal, which we will be using like whatever we do, right? In straightforward way we do assert dot assert equals expected value and actual value. But because we are doing custom logging, right, into extend report or your logger, whatever, so what we'll be doing is, if this assertion is true, or it is success, then it is going to write this particular entry into the extend report. If it is failed because of the assertion exception, or could be different any kind of exception, it is going to mark it as a failed with proper uh, error message. Final method I wrote it as a get text, and there could be any number of methods. Okay, it all depends on how your application is, what and all different things you need to test your application. So going forward, as and when we need the things, we are going to put it under actions engine, or let's see if we can create some utils class. Okay, for now we are good. Okay, now what we are going to do in this video, what I told you is we are going to create a login test. Okay, now in order to create the login test, let me go to my url and let me start my server. Give me a minute, guys. Okay, so I'm going to start my Apache and MySQL, because I'm using the application which is deployed on my local, that's the PHP application, okay, QDPM application, and it is deployed on port 8090. Fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log in by entering email, password, going to click on login. That's what, and I'm going to see whether it logs all the message. That is, I'm doing send keys over here. I'm going to do send keys at password. I'm going to click on login button, right? So I'm going to do all this stuff. Okay. Now the login page is basically I need to go to the page objects, and under page object, if you remember, we did created a method called as login, right? Now in order to access this particular login method, what we need to do is we need to create object of this particular class, login page object. So what I'll do is I'll go to test case and I'll say login page objects, let's say login is equal to new login page objects, and here I need to pass the driver. So I'll say driver factory dot get instance dot get driver. Get driver. Okay, this would give me the current driver instance. Okay, but one thing what I'm concerned here is about, let's say if I'm launching five or six different instances at the same time, it is going to create five or six different login objects, and that is going to mess up the things because the object name is going to be remain same, and I believe that will mess up. Okay, so I need to change my approach. Okay, so what I'll do is now okay, I hope you got the problem. The problem here with this approach would be, uh if I'm creating five or six, let's say if I'm instantiating five different test cases execution at a time in parallel, right? Now the value of this particular stuff, driver factory dot get instance dot get driver, is going to be different for all five test cases, right? So that won't be possible with this particular combination, right? It might create, let's say if it is creating five different login objects with the same thing, it will hold only last object and it will mess up the things. So this particular way is not possible. Okay, so let's see. Let me delete these things for now. Okay, so that means I cannot pass the WebDriver object something like this. Instead, I'm just thinking, can I hard code the object over here? Can I do something like this? Okay, or better. What I'll do is I will drop this idea. Okay, so whatever page factory we were using right in our last framework, I'll drop this idea for now. What I'll do is, instead of this page factory, what I'm going to do is, so definitely we are going to follow page object model only, but not a page factory. Okay, so instead of using this find by annotations, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, let's say, string, or let us use by class. Okay, so I'll say by, and what is my first, I'll first write it and then I'll explain it quickly. So what is my first web element? First web element is email, so I'll say email, uh I'll say email, uh let it be email is equal to by dot, what I need to use over here, we need to use name, right? And the value of name attribute was this thing. So let me use by name, and my name value is going to be this. Okay, so if you remember, we write something like this: driver dot find element by, you remember we write something called as by. So I'm using the same by over here. So this by, if you see, it's the abstract class, right? That's the class basically which we are using, where we have all these abstracts method by, static methods basically, by id, link text, partial link text, text path, and whatever methods we are using out of there. Okay, so I'm going to create object of this by. Okay, so I'm not going to use this find by. Next, so I'm going to do the same thing for all the web elements what I'm going to access. Second thing, I'm going to create it for password, and third one, that's basically xpath. Okay, let me copy this xpath, and it should be xpath. Okay, and it should be password, and it should be, what's that, login button, login underscore button. Okay, what I'll do is, because these are static things, right? Let me make something like this: email, password, login underscore button. We may make these things as a static final, shouldn't be any issue, because these locators are very much constant for any number of instances you are going to create. Okay, should be fine even if I make them as a static. Okay, I'm not going to use this stuff now. Okay, now how to get the locators out of this particular, because these are just by class object, right? And in order to get the web element, what we need to do is we need to use something called as driver.find element. Now how to get the driver object? By using driver factory. Okay, that we did earlier. Give me a minute. Driver, what's happening? Driver factory dot get instance dot get driver. Okay, so this will give me a driver object. Then on this driver object we are going to do driver dot find element, and at the by we are not going to do something like by dot name or by dot export something, right? Because that is something we already implemented on this line number 15, 16, 17. So initially I'll go to email, and on email what I want to do is I want to do the send keys. So I'll do dot send keys, and this should work perfectly. Okay, but uh, if we use send keys like this, then there is no use of what we created, something called as action engines, right? Because we created a custom method called as send keys custom, right, for entering the keys, right? So we should use this particular method in order to do the custom logging, right? So I'll call this particular method. Now in order to call this method, it is present under actions class, and I don't want to create object of actions class everywhere. But what I remember is under test base we did extended actions class. Okay, so what I'll do is in each and every page object, what I'll do is I'll extend test base, right? Because it will indirectly reference all the methods from this actions engine. Okay, kind of inheritance, not a kind of inheritance in fact. Okay, so I'm not going to do something like this. The same thing we are going to achieve, but by using our custom method, that is send keys custom. And here what is my web element? My web element is going to be this, right? This is my web element. What's the field name? Okay, before that, what's the value is going to be email. And what's the field name? So this is something which we are going to use for logging the message into your extend report or logger, whatever, just to identify what field it is for. So I'll say login email field. Okay, great. Now this is how I am going to do the send case across all the application. Okay, email enter is done. Next thing I'm going to do the things for password, and finally I'm going to click. Okay, let me do the same thing for password because the things remain same. Instead of email I need to use something called as password over here, password. Okay, and that's the by class object. Okay, and here login I'll say password. Okay, and here value I should put is password that I'm going to ask to the from the caller. Okay, now for click, again I should not use directly this click method because I want to do the custom logging. So for click we did created this custom method, right? Click underscore custom. So I'm going to use that particular method, and that is going to be here, click custom. And what's my web element? My web element is going to be driver dot find element by, and what is that by is login button. So I'll just change that by. And what's my field name? My field name is let's say login button. Okay, great, I'm done. That's pretty simple. Okay, now in order to access this particular login method I need to create object of this particular class. But this time, because we don't have any explicit constructor, we need not to pass the drivers and all, right? So I'll say login page objects, login page is equal to new login page objects. Okay, you may consider creating that in test base itself, should be fine. Okay, because but in my case, because I'm just creating couple of test classes, so I'm not going to follow that. But yeah, you can do that just to use that globally. Now in order to log in, what I'm going to do is login page dot, I'm going to call the login method, and here I need to pass my email and my password. Okay, now your question might be, how can I directly log in? So if you remember, uh, we are extending, I mean this test case class is extending test base, and if I go to the test base, you see something called as before method, and this is something which we already implemented and tested. that is setting up this browser, maximizing the window, setting up implicit timeout, and navigating to the URL, and URL is we are referring it from properties file. So these things we are already doing as a part of before method, so that is something we need not to repeat. So because we are extending test base, whenever it comes to this at the rate test annotation, it will look for before method, and yes, it is there, so it will execute. Great. Now this login page method should get executed. Okay, and let me put out my credentials. So my credentials, I'm going to use something admin, and password is going to be this. Okay, so this is just a login step. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead out of that, but that's it, because I just want to test. And in the second case as well, I'm going to uh, do the same thing. Let it be, let the thing should be same, or let me make the password, let's say as 1234. Okay, I'm not doing any kind of validation, so my test case might not fail, but we will see the same things into the reports. Okay, and do we have earlier reports created? Let me quickly refresh. No, my reports folder is empty. Great. Now one thing we need to remember, we are we are doing extent reporting, and the extent reporting part we implemented mostly into the listeners, right? We are initializing that under listeners only. You see, create test we are doing under listeners only. So you need to make sure that if you run the test case directly, something like this, let's say I'm going to run this particular test case directly like this. You see the execution has started, and it will launch the browser, but it should give me an error. Okay, you see it is giving me the failure error, and why that failure is, if you see, it says null pointer exception, and it is coming at line number 29 over here, and it is on this extend method, right? Because we are trying to call this extend get extend method, but it is not started yet. When it will get started, it will started only if you use this listeners implementation class. And how we use listeners, we go to testng.xml, and let me check if we have added. Yeah, we already have added this, right? Listeners annotation. So make sure that you have this listeners annotation already in place, so that this listeners will get invoked before your test execution gets started. I'll right click on my, let's say, testng.xml, and run it, and testng test. So now I have two test cases, and you see it has launched two Chrome driver at a time, and you see it is working with two instances, and it has entered some value, and once the load gets completed, it will close the instances. And yes, both the test cases got executed, and test cases were executing in parallelly without any issues. Okay, now what I'm more interested in, I'm more interested into seeing my report. I'll go to the reports folder, and here is my latest execution report, and you see it has created two nodes, basically test 1 and test 2. If I go to test 1, you see how good logging is it. Okay, so because I'm using dark theme, it is a bit difficult to read for me now, but you see it is logging all the messages like login email field, and entered value as whatever value you were trying to enter. Login password field, entered value as admin at the rate 123, clicked on login link, and test is passed. Okay, so you can do a better reporting than this. Okay, so this is just because of this is just because of sample. I'm just trying to show you how we can log the messages, but make sure that we make the messages more readable, more understandable. Even these are understandable, but you can put it in better way. If I go to test case 2, you see the password what we entered, it was 1234, right? That means my extent report logging, custom report logging is working perfectly. Okay, without any issue. It is working for my parallel test execution as well. Whether the parallel execution is with thread count as method, thread type as method, or classes, or whatever different options we have, we'll see that in our last few sessions whenever we do the integration parts and all. But for now it looks good to me. If I go to my dashboard, it show me two of two test cases are passed, and I have already shown you this particular environment variables what we are adding, and how much time it has taken, only 17 seconds and all. Okay, so yeah, that's it. I was more interested into seeing this particular uh, custom message logging into my extent report, and because I'm seeing these kind of messages, that's the reason I'm basically not using logger file into my personal projects as well. Okay, so I don't prefer, basically because I do the deep logging into my extent reports itself. Okay, so I think that's it for this video. I'm going to end this video over here. What we did is we just used login method, only one login method on login page. Okay, and just to show the usage of custom message logging into your extent. Okay, now in next few videos what we are going to do is we are going to start writing our actual test cases. Okay, so let me show you my actual test cases. Just give me a minute if I have that already in place. Yeah, so these are here. Okay, so I have just taken the screenshot. So these are my test cases. Okay, I'm going to navigate, log in, and navigate to task, and also I'm going to start my work on further screens. Okay, so yeah, and one more quick point here is going to be that would need a little rework from my side, because we are not going to use the page factory, right? And the limitation why I already told you, right? We are going to follow this particular way, right? So I need to repeat the same stuff for all this stuff whatever we did. Okay, so this is something I will complete, and I will continue in my next video for creating some end-to-end test case. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's it. Stay tuned. Thank you.